Can you hear me over there? All right, good. Or should I shout more? All right. Hey, you're gonna have to read it. It's already on. All right, welcome to another Bucks County Tech meetup. This is our something number meetup, and we're going on 2 years in February, so it's really awesome that we've been around this long, and we continue to have a sizable number of people and more guests than people from Meet, that stick around for the meetup. So that's actually a good sign. I'm always worried that there's going to be like 20 Meet people here and one person that's a guest, and they're like, all right, I feel very awkward. But no, thank you for everybody for being here. Just a couple of reminders. It is paid parking out there. So if you didn't pay, well, make sure you pay. We do have pizza and drinks, and we go to Triumph after the meetup to talk, drink beer, ask questions, drink beer, and then drink some beer. I don't do anything to put on this meetup, so I'd like to put out a thanks to a whole bunch of people. Nina, who ordered the pizza, Dave, who actually sets everything up, Tom, who's not here, but he helps out tremendously as well during the meetups, Miki for hosting, Grant for agreeing to speak here tonight, and you for showing up. So I'd like to thank everybody here. It's an interesting talk because Bucks County Tech, we usually think of like pure programming, and then we have this QA, quality assurance thing, which is still going to be about programmers, but it's like quality assurance for programmers. We don't need anything. We know all about quality and perfection and not making mistakes. Maybe he'll have something interesting to talk about. This is the part where we go around the room, we do introductions. So I'm going to point at you rudely, and when I point at you, you're going to simply tell me your name, and what you do. So for example, hi, my name is Jason Lotito, and I'm the DevOps lead architect here at Meet Me.
Hi, I'm Grant from Python Wheels. I'm speaking tonight, and I'm the VP of Engineering.
I'm Matt. I do cloud storage and indexing for small projects. Developer here at Meet.
I'm Bobby. I'm an iOS developer here at Meet Me.
Molly, QA manager at Meet.
Cyrus, backend developer here at Meet Me.
Hey, Jeremy, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Jeremy Simpson, VP of Network Operations here at Meet Me. John Meyer, I've been running the quantitative hedge fund in Princeton for 8 years. We started this month. I'm going to be a software developer. Get myself back.
My name's Evan, co-founder of a telemedicine company, and I live right around the corner.
I'm Mark Pervez. I'm a technical writer. I explain people how to use your software, and also I think make APIs clear.
Chuck Lutz, I'm a simulation developer at Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, we know who you are, Chuck.
I'm Chris. I'm an API developer here at Meet Me.
Drew Donardo, I'm on the engineering team here at Meet Me.
I'm Gus, I'm tester here at Meet Me.
I'm Clinton, I'm kind of a full stack developer at SCI Financial.
I'm George, I'm a programmer in different languages.
I'm Tom, I'm a Kotlin developer at
I'm Matt, I'm just I head up the QA team for Meet Me.
All right. That's easy. It's that awkward time when you have to speak in front of a whole bunch of people at a place you didn't expect to do that. So, next month, we're going to be talking, I should give you guys a heads up on the next month's talk, we're going to be talking about the art of Android. It's a really interesting talk. I've been pressuring the designer, to give this talk for quite some time. And finally, he figured that the only way he could shut me up was to actually give a talk. He's a designer. He uses an Android phone. That's amazing to me, and he does a really good job at it. I highly encourage you to come back next month for this talk on the art of Android. It should be really good. And if it's not, then play again. For those of you interested in talking here at Bucks County Tech, February is available. We filled January slot, so if you have a topic you'd like to talk on, February is available. Let me know after, or you can message me over the Meetup website. So, a little brief before we get into the actual talk here. Quality. So when Matt came to me and was like, "Hey, Rich found this guy. He says that he's talking about QA 2.0. We should bring him in." And I was like, "All right, well, what's he talking on? QA, quality, assurance. What does that really mean? How do we define quality?" So I went to the dictionary on the Mac, and I selected a definition that would what quality means. It means high social standing. Quality stands for high social standing. I didn't know how this would relate to what Bucks County Tech, but okay, fine. Then I went and looked up assurance, and in the definition of assurance, there's one that says a promise. So selecting those two, I came up with the 0.0 version of quality assurance. And basically my definition is a promise to maintain a high social standing. And that to me, I was like, I do that already. I'm a classic guy. What do I need to learn about this? And Matt was looking at me going, "Jason, seriously, just be quiet." So quality assurance, what does that mean? Well, then I saw this. You can actually put quality assurance in the dictionary on the Mac. It comes back with this long stuff, all these words, but really the key is the maintenance of a desired level of quality. QA. So what is QA when you put it together, like just QA? And I was like, well, I know what QA is. I know what QA, at least version 1.0. It's those people in the other room, in this room, that I just throw stuff to and they sort of fix stuff. So, but apparently, through all this, Matt was just looking at me like, "Oh God, seriously, Jason, stop." Apparently, we're doing this wrong. So I don't know, maybe he's going to have some interesting ideas here. But I'm really interested because QA 2.0, being responsible for engineering quality by Grant. I'd like to welcome you up here.
All right, I'm gonna sit up here.
Oh, you have the...
Yeah, here's the mic. Yeah, no, I got the mic. Oh, yeah. Good turn off. Although I'm a pretty nice one.
Turn it on.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so anyway, I felt weirdly about naming it QA 2.0 because really I don't think I'm introducing any new ideas. And so just to back up, I'm Grant Ammons. I'm the VP of Engineering at Pipeline Deals, which is web-based sales software. We've been around for 9 years. I'm one of the owners of the company. I was the original developer back then, and now we are about 35 employees. By default, I guess, I'm the VP of Engineering now, and I have about 12 developers split across 2 teams. We do not have a QA department or a QA engineer. We get by without one, and I'll go through that in my talk here. But just a few caveats about the way we do QA and the way we work at Pipeline Deals. First of all, we were bootstrapped for 8 of those 9 years, so we're very constrained in terms of revenue. We've never experienced a real explosive growth or anything like that. It's always been sort of very, just very slow growth over the period of 9 years. We did raise a Series A, about $1.1 million in December. That's allowed us to grow a little bit faster. But again, it's just been a super conservative move. We sort of take the 37 signals approach. We're actually building a real company as opposed to some company that has a runway, and if we don't meet that runway, we go out of business. We give everybody stock options, all that stuff. So, like I said, this is a caveat. This is what works for us, for our team, for our revenue, for our programming language that we choose, which is Ruby. So, that being said, let's get started. So, first of all, we don't have any QA at all. I mean, we sort of do, but our other co-founder, he said, "Hey Grant, why don't we have a QA? Do we need a QA engineer?" And we really didn't have too much of a problem with bugs or introducing bugs into our software. I mean, we deploy a lot, and I said, I don't know, maybe we do. Would that make things a lot better? And so I started looking, and DHH, one of the guys from 37 Signals, He had this tweet back in January. He said, I don't think anything has done more for our initial release quality at Basecamp than dedicated QA and exploratory system testing. And so I was like, huh, interesting. Maybe we should have a QA person just pounding on our system and finding bugs and submitting tickets and just raising the bar, right? And then, of course, people got into discussions with DHH, as you do. And, this guy said, I don't think this is right because once a dev relies on a QA department, well, it's a subconscious thing. They're just going to chuck it over the wall. They'll find the bugs, whatever. I really don't need to be responsible for the code that I write. And so I was like, we don't have that problem right now because we don't have a QA department. Our engineers are actually responsible for the bugs they introduce, and they always come back to the engineer, from our angry customer care person or whoever, they hear about it. So maybe we're in a good spot. And that's the thing I wanted to avoid. And by the way, I really had an awesome YouTube thing, and there's this dude chucking something over a wall, but I'm not connected to the Wi-Fi, so sorry. It was awesome, though. But that's the thing I wanted to avoid, is the wall, right? Like, if I actually brought in a QA engineer to start testing and to start doing all this stuff, I just felt like I would introduce the wall. And developers would be chucking stuff over the wall, and they wouldn't, necessarily feel responsible for the code that they ship, and, we'd have this weird divide. And so I kind of wanted to avoid that. And so what I started thinking was, well, maybe engineering should just own QA. And we don't need a QA engineer, and that's how we're going to roll. And so, DHH got back to me and said, well, once a dev relies on the QA department, subconscious will test thoroughly thing. And then DHH said, well, it's exactly the know what code touches part that makes them uniquely unfit for the QA in the big picture. And I was thinking, well, yeah, maybe that's right. Maybe they shouldn't actually see the, and like it started like swirling around in my head, like, do we actually need a QA department? And maybe like we just set like restrictions or something like that. Maybe we can get away with having a QA department, and maybe the actual quality will rise in our pipeline deals engineering department. And so, I had questions, and I really did not know whether or not pipeline deals should actually get QA. Now, granted, customers weren't going crazy about poor quality or finding bugs all the time. Like, things were like, okay, maybe they could be better, but like, for the most part, pretty good. And then I got into a conversation. I started looking around. I started reading some tweets, and I found this dude named Michael Bolton. That's his name, but he's actually a very reputable guy in the QA department, the QA sphere. And I sent him an email, just saying brain dumping, essentially, and all this stuff, and referencing DHH's tweets, just. Like maybe he was a consultant, so maybe we engage him as a consultant. Maybe we have to bring him in and he can tell us what we're doing wrong or tell us how we should go about, introducing QA into pipeline deals. And then he started coming back to me and he said, every engineer you hire is a QA engineer. And I was like, wow, okay. Well, that makes sense because that's how we roll right now. And then the real thing that he said to me that really made a difference in my head as to where, we sort of take this thing is, he said, testing is not quality assurance. Testing brings awareness to the people who put quality in. And so the people who put the quality in, obviously, are the developers, right? So then I started thinking, well, maybe we just need some help with quality assistance. We need somebody who can just sort of like bang on the application, but there's not necessarily a wall, and could help the developers put quality into the code that they write. And by the way, I don't have my notes, so I'm sort of all over the place with my slides because my software sucks, so I'm sorry in advance. I'm just trying to remember like my head when I wrote this. I mean, ultimately, yes, you all always have testers, right? You will ship to customers, and your customers will be your testers if you don't test your software. And that's not really a good thing. Your customers should not be your QA department. And so that's when I started thinking about, well, maybe if we just, have a higher culture of quality within our engineering department. And sort of what I mean by that is, have our developers ultimately be responsible for the quality. Sure, right now we have our customer care department. They know our application very well. They help customers all the time with imports and whatever they're doing. So they're actually great for testing out new features, for determining if maybe a particular feature is coinciding with another feature, or if it's going to be a problem, or if there's like some old dark area of the application that not many people know about, visibility rules and all this other stuff. They would sort of know that stuff and be aware and be able to tell the developer who's responsible for the change to be aware of this particular thing. And so that's what I decided to do. We're not going to hire a QA engineer. We're just going to really beef up our culture of quality with our engineers and pipeline deals. So this is how I avoided adding QA, I guess you could say. QA engineers specifically. I think having people who actually test your application is perfectly fine, but again, I'm trying to avoid the wall. So first of all, pipeline deals is Ruby on Rails, so we're dynamically typed applications. So unit tests are an absolute must. When a developer submits a pull request, if it's not well tested, it goes right back. Second of all, we have a lot of integration tests. Pretty much any feature or any even bug fix that we write has a full stack of integration tests written by the developer to exercise that particular fix. Second of all is we're really big on peer reviews. So we use the GitHub pull requests. They're great. But basically it forces the developer's hand. You really don't want to look bad in front of your peers. You want to be sure that the code that you submit is good. You want to dot all your I's and cross your T's. You kind of have to submit to the peer pressure. Your peers are going to be judging you and your code. It's all out there. They're going to see it. So you want it to be good. And so you're not just going to chuck something out there that's just going to hit production and just fuck up everything. Sorry for my language. You're actually going to care about what you submit because your peers are going to be looking at you and judging. And this really works. We've been doing this for 3 years now. We've been on GitHub and pull requests, and our quality definitely. I really don't have numbers to back it up, but certainly the feel is that we're shipping much higher quality software. Whereas before, we basically just would ship stuff to production and maybe test it, maybe not. This actually really works. Yes.
So test code peer review and check.
It's part of the pull request. Yeah. So if it's judged just as much as any other code because it's ultimately as important as the code itself. So yes, definitely.
Question?
Yes.
When you started 3 years ago, when you started this process, did you already have good unit test and integration test coverage or habits of doing that?
No. Well, we had okay unit tests. We didn't have continuous integration software, so we sort of just ran it as we ran it. And we certainly didn't have the culture of doing pull requests or code reviews or anything like that. It was basically just ship it to production and we'll hear about it later, sort of thing. So with peer reviews, there's a little bit to watch out for. First of all, when we first introduced it, we relied on a single guy to sort of review pull requests, mainly because he wanted to do that, and he was actually really, really good at it. He could find stuff that nobody else could find. However, he was spending 80% of his time doing just peer reviews. And he was supposed to be just an engineer, regular guy on the team. So we had to put the brakes on that, and really, you just can't rely on one guy. It's sort of a shared thing. You can ask for a specific person to review a particular pull request if they have, touched that piece of code before or whatever. But in general, we try to democratize the whole thing and make it, so everybody participates. Ultimately, I found that, engineers should spend maybe 10 to 15% of the time reviewing code, and the team lead should have the final say on whether or not something's good or not. Also, we do testing checklists. So this is basically just to help our customer care team when they review a pull request. Now they're able to do that because we wrote some software called Stager, which basically we can spin up a EC2 instance that has the particular branch loaded up right in there, so they can just fire up a server, test the thing out they want to test out. And this is what we do to help them. We basically just emulate what we did with our integration tests and say, this is the actual developer here commenting on this particular pull request. here's what you should look out for. And so that sort of just gives some help to the customer care person who's acting as our quote-unquote tester, to make sure everything's okay.
So that right there is a list of the specific things that Blue 15 ticket right there.
Yeah.
Things that he's worried about that the testers will check, or it's calling out specific things.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And this is basically what he already wrote with his integration tests. Yeah. Code review testing states. Oh yeah. So we're kind of an agile shop. We were Scrum for a while, but then we actually adopted sort of a really lightweight Kanban. And so we basically just have states for cards. We're using Trello. We were using Jira, but then everybody wanted to gouge their eyeballs out, so we stopped using Jira, and now we're using Trello, which is much nicer. But it still does the same thing. We basically have cards, and they can be in certain states. And the iteration cycles are super fast, so that actually allows us to, it shifts back that culture of quality back to engineers when you're super agile, because if you're following true waterfall model, obviously, there's a whole carve out for QA. It goes from development to QA, falls down. Instead, we do the agile approach, and we use lightweight tools, and so that just that shifts that QA closer to engineering, as I think it should be. Yeah. So the other thing is when a developer deploys their code, that we deploy like maybe 5 or 6 times a day at this point. The responsible team, they deploy the feature, or the responsible engineer, and they're going to stick around to make sure that everything's okay. Usually for a couple hours, monitoring our error rate, things like that, response times, making sure that we didn't destroy production. Also, we only have 2 teams in pipeline deals, but they're not separated by specialty. Each team are a series of full stack engineers. So that means basically that, if they were responsible for a particular feature, a month down the line or 2 months down the line, if a customer actually runs into a defect, that defect goes right back to that team that did the work. In the meantime, they haven't broken up and started working on a different feature, or, I'm a DB guy, I don't really touch this stuff, I just switch across from different teams. Like, we don't really have that. Everyone's a full stack guy. They all know the entire application, and we have them, just grouped by feature. So in closing, DHH is right. I think, yes, QA in some incarnation, probably testing, just having testers help developers inject quality into their application is the right thing. However, I don't think he used the right nomenclature. He probably just should have said testers, and that would have made my life a lot easier. They would have understood where I wanted to go right away. And that's my talk. So, thank you. Questions? Yes?
So what is the distinction then between crossing out QA and saying dedicated testers?
The distinction in my brain is basically.
Okay, can you repeat the question?
No, I'm sorry. Yes, the question was like, what distinguishes testers from like QA from the last slides that I had there with DHH? And really, I think in my head, the difference is how much responsibility you give that person, right? If it's testers and they're just sort of testing the things that the developers already said that they should test, and the developers already thought about this, and the developers have already peer-reviewed the code and integration tested the code and basically made sure that when this thing goes to production, and they're also responsible for anything that happens in production, like, they're on the hook, and the testers can help, test and be sure that, like, it's okay, but it's not like a completely separate department that's just gonna, like, submit tickets and like, I'm gonna chuck this over and they're gonna find things. Like, that's not really how I thought it should go. There shouldn't be any chucking over. Like, the developers should find things themselves and help testers just be sure that they can help find things and maybe point out, some externalities. But they shouldn't really be finding egregious bugs, I think. So maybe that's a good answer.
See, there was a question about unit testing in there, and someone brought up that you have unit testing before the started, and you said no, and you qualified that. But
some, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
How did you instill the? How did you enforce unit testing and acceptance testing? Was it simply like a hard, okay, you can't get through unless you have, 80% code coverage or something like that, or was it a gradual push for unit testing? And at some point, has there ever been a case where it's like we need this feature out now, we're going to ignore unit testing, or just get the feature out? How do you go about doing that? Good.
So to answer your first question, I mean, we did have some testing for very core, like our visibility structure, anything that's really hairy, that had some pretty good testing. But like for like a long time, we were not adding tests to new stuff that was coming out, much to our detriment. So the way we implemented it, we basically just said, okay, going forward, we're going to be doing peer reviews, and we're going to be using GitHub, and we're going to be adding tests to any new stuff that gets written. And if you come across, if you're modifying some existing code that doesn't have tests, just be sure that it has enough tests that you're confident that it's going to do the right thing. And that's how we're going to roll from here on out. Now, granted, there's some untested parts of pipeline deals. That's okay, because any new software that we write, we generally try to add tests if we need them, specifically integration tests, and that's worked out pretty good. Yeah. What was your second part, though?
I forget.
Oh yeah. Generally that doesn't happen. We work with a PM. We say, listen, this is kind of like a hairy piece. Like we're going to need a little bit more time to just be sure that things are going on, because ultimately, it's going to come back. If you don't test and you just want to ship something out, and you're not confident that it's going to be working great, you will hear about that a few months down the line, and you're going to burn the same amount of time, ultimately. So I guess just find a PM who understands that.
So is that how you guys measure the developers too, based on the number of, acceptance testing parts back?
We don't measure, actually. We just, maybe we should. I don't know. But we don't really find it's a problem because, I don't know, the peer review and the culture that we have of just having that peer review is good enough where, nobody is complaining about quality, internally or externally right now. So, it's working, so I don't necessarily think I have to measure that. I mean, granted, we probably should, but we don't.
You guys do have a process, though, where you have acceptance testing. You mentioned, right? Look like an Kanban board.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And it's a combination of the engineer, basically just emulating what the PM wants. The PM is testing it. The customer care team is testing it. That's sort of the acceptance testing piece, the user acceptance, piece right there.
Okay, so they help point out some of the bugs, and you guys work tests to accommodate those issues found, and then pass it back. Go back into the acceptance testing cycle?
Yeah, if the PM test drives something and says, no, we actually needed to do this or that, yes, it will go back to the developer. They will update their tests. Then it will go back again to the PM and the customer care team, and they'll go again until it's right. Yeah. Yes.
Don't you think that the workload for a developer is too much for doing all these different tasks?
No, not really. I mean, because it eventually comes back anyways, right? If you're not doing that stuff, you're gonna just be sacked with bugs. Your customers aren't really gonna be too happy, and no one's really gonna be happy about that relationship. We did that for 5 years, by the way. We just sort of just shat stuff into production and dealt with those consequences. And it wasn't really an awesome scene. We had a huge bug backlog, and customers were pissed off because they actually could feel that the quality was bad. And we weren't working on new features because we were just working on bugs. So I think ultimately you're going to hear about one way or another. So you can either invest in it beforehand or afterwards, but afterwards always sucks more.
Just to add my point of view to that as well, I'm a professional, and yeah, it's going to add additional time. I'm a professional, though. I like my work. I want it to be good. I want my least I try to write it in a testable way. And I do add unit tests, and I do try to do extensive testing for the stuff that I do. Yeah, it's going to add to the time. Yes, it does. And PMs sometimes come back and they're like, hey, like, no, I got to do some more testing. I got to do some more testing. But in the past, here at Mickey, we've done some huge moves, huge migrations of different systems. The RabbitMQ move was one example. And we were able to do that live with very minimal interruption to anything, without user impact. All because there was all that extensive testing done up front, all that extensive work done up front. But at the end of the day, is it too much work? I'm a professional, damn it. That's the way I look at it. So.
Yes.
There's a lot of debate out there about like the balance between like system-wide tests and unit testing. Maybe even seen that actual DHH report kind of launching part of that debate. And you've probably heard about the whole testing pyramid thing and all that. So do you find that there's a certain balance that is worked out at your shop to kind of avoid that, we are an end-to-end test and there's a problem somewhere in the system and we have to figure out where it is as opposed to the unit test?
No, not really. Unit tests for us are kind of a necessity just because of the language that we use. I think if you were using like some statically typed language like Java or something similar, unit tests may not be as necessary as they are for us. But given the fact that you can pass in, like, you're expecting this object, but you're getting this object, or you're expecting this object, or you're getting nil. That type of stuff, like unit tests, we have to use unit tests to cover those types of cases. We have to because we're using a dynamic language. So that's just like par for the course for Rails, right? So I think really the percentage is, there's no like percentage there, like integration versus unit. Like we write integration tests because those are the things that actually guard against what a user is experiencing. But the unit tests are specifically for the developers and just being sure that like A, when we come back to this code 6 months later, we understand what the hell it's doing, and B, it's not like we're making sure that it's doing the right thing. It's just for developers. So we don't really try to score a ratio or try to get to a golden ratio or anything like that. No, we just use like the standard Rails like controller tests. That's good enough for most cases. Yeah. Yes.
I have two questions. I think they're somewhat related. First one is how does documentation fit into all this? And the other one is, do you find the concept that now with social media being so prevalent and users talking to each other, that way you find the concept that makes the consequences of poor initial quality even worse?
Well, yeah. If somebody like hate tweets you, that sucks. We've had it happen, like not very often, but like when it does happen, like it's not a good thing. We try to avoid that at all costs. I mean, it's only happened like a handful of times, but like it does happen and it sucks. But like to answer your first question about documentation, we're not that hardcore about documentation. Usually we let our tests do that for us. Like our tests are basically our documentation, living documentation, I guess you could say, because they have to pass and they have to work, and so they don't really fall out of, like they don't lie. Like documentation can lie eventually because it's your code changes and you don't update the docs. Well, then all of a sudden the docs are a lie. Whereas if your tests are your documentation, then they continue to live and be truthful. That's generally how we communicate, at least internally to developers, like how something is supposed to work. We rely on those unit tests, but documentation for customers is a whole other thing. I mean, that's our customer care team usually writes our help documents, and that's their bag.
Okay, your customer care team has
Yeah, they're responsible for that. Yeah.
Good place for it.
We actually use Cucumber here, so like our tests are self-documented because you actually have to write the tests out in order for the tests to run. So it's very much self-documented testing because of that. And then in regards to the second question, we have a feedback channel which we try to instead of our users picking out what their problems are in our feed in our chat sections of our products, we actually kind of try to move them over to like a feedback channel that comes directly to us, and we tell them that like, we actually follow up and monitor this stuff directly, more closely than we would the rest of the site, so that they can kind of communicate and not communicate elsewhere about what the problems are with our clients. We find that to be pretty good.
Yeah, we do the same thing with our customer care is actually really good. I mean, you know, when they call, they get a human on the phone. Like we try to champion that. You know, if they have like a problem, we always follow up when the problem's fixed. If it's a bug or if it's, you know, they ran into some issue that they just can't get past. You know, they need a developer to help. We always follow up, and then you know, they really appreciate that. So I feel like, you know, we don't really run into hate tweets very often because of our strong like customer care presence. So yeah, it's probably the same type of thing. Yeah.
So you were mentioning the time you expect developers to spend on code for peer review, 10 to 15% time. Did you find any issues with code reviews becoming blockers? Someone puts a code review in, someone else is expected to code review, has another project coming along, they're trying to get their stuff done, and so this code review sitting there, it's not getting done. Code reviews take time and energy and effort, and so now, and then slowly things start getting back up. How do you address that?
I don't think we really have like a formal process for that. It's just sort of fluid, you know. We find a lot of things in the code review column in our Trello board. Like, you know, typically one of the team leads will say, "Hey, we got a lot of things in our code review column. Let's just like pause and just like knock this stuff out." And you know, that works. People just stop what they're doing, review for a while, maybe take a whole day and review like a whole bunch of things and deploy them, and then move on with the next thing.
So what's the typical size and length of time to get something from development to production?
Our cards are usually like no more than a day's worth of work, intentionally, you know, because we really don't want long-running pull requests. We don't want long-running branches. Anything, if we have a branch that's like 3,000 lines of code or something like that, like that's insane. You know, it's just too much. You know, so we try to break it down as much as possible.
What's the average? So the average project size is then 1 day, or?
No, I mean, like if we have a huge project,
Mini projects?
we'll split it up. But we'll hide things behind feature flags, things like that. We'll always ship it to production.
Okay.
You know, yeah.
You guys use a tool to manage that?
Not really. We just sort of made our own feature flagging system. And oh, sorry. What was your question again? Just.
Oh, sorry. Do you guys use a tool for hiding certain features on a production site so that other users can't see it, so that you guys can continue to ship things and move quickly?
Yeah. Did you guys hear that question? The question was about like, you know, how do we, since our cards are small and like the stuff that we deliver, our pull request sizes are small, you know, how do we ship bigger projects? And, you know, we'll always split up a bigger project into much smaller pieces, and we'll ship it to production, but we'll hide it behind, you know, a feature flag. And then he was asking if we were using a particular piece of software for that, and the answer is no. We sort of wrote our own homebrew feature flag system. So, you know, projects that we haven't even shipped, a whole bunch of them are actually in production right now, hidden behind feature flags, which is actually kind of nice because we can actually release it to a certain percentage of our customers at a time. So if something we deem particularly risky, you know, we can ship it to 5%, 10%, you know, and then just ramp it up exponentially as we know that it's okay, or it's not going to affect performance, or it's not going to destroy our database. Or, you know, maybe it's actually a brand new feature, a brand new workflow that users aren't used to. We actually have what we call our input crew, which are basically beta testers. They always get the beta test software first. They're happy to get it because they signed up and they want that. And they always give us awesome feedback, so we'll just feature flip it on for them. You know, we'll get some awesome feedback, and then iterate, and then ship to the rest of the you know, customer base.
Another question on the code review front, the unit testing front. So, like I know a lot of people, you know, they appreciate testing, it's great, and it's good. One of the problems I see with people that are new to unit testing is that their unit tests are I'm sure now you have, you a lot more experience with it, but how did you do it from the beginning when it was still something you were like, hey, everyone needs to start unit testing, and suddenly it's like, now they're doing it day to day?
I don't know. Like, I feel like, most of our engineers are senior engineers, and like, if you're doing Ruby and Rails, like, you need to do it anyway. Like, it's baked into the framework, and like, you're encouraged to do it. So, like, we haven't had that problem, And like nowadays, especially since we've been doing it, I think in a high quality manner for the past couple of years, if we got a new developer, they could look at what we've been doing and have a very good reference for how to write tests. The other thing we do is we have lunch and learns on Wednesdays, and talk about the state of the art for certain things, like testing frameworks, or cool gems, or whatever. So that that helps as well. So yeah.
How large is the team there?
We have 12 developers, split across 2 teams.
Other companies you're aware of that adopted this culture of quality where it's...
The question was, are there other companies that I'm aware of that have adopted this culture of quality that I'm calling it? And I think
Larger companies?
I went to the CTO Summit, I think in March, and there's the Square app guys were talking basically about the same exact things. And I know that there are hundreds of developers, and clearly they've made this scale. I think that's probably the best.
The same concept? Or
Yeah, kind of the same concepts. I mean, I feel like if you're using Rails, like you sort of fall into this anyways. 37 Signals, I know they have at least 30 developers, maybe more. And DHA is talking in January about their first QA hire. That's like, okay, like clearly somebody else is sort of doing this. And we've always sort of emulated 37 Signals in kind of every way, including not taking any funding, bootstrapping, and language choice, building a business that's sustainable, and so I follow his engineering practices as well, and so clearly they're doing sort of the same thing. Questions?
no.
Yes.
You mentioned one of the monitoring tools that you use for like error rates and response times. What tools do you use for that? Are there other things that you measure when you push code out to make sure that quality is not just with that code change, but also the rest of the site is still okay as well?
Yeah, so the question was error rates and response times, how we measure that. Are there other tools that we use, or any other like metrics that we use to measure if a deploy totally sucked? We use New Relic because that's what you use when you're a Rails application. We definitely measure error rate, and we can, you can see the graphs. I mean, if it goes up, that's a problem.
What do you use to measure that?
Well, New Relic has error rate, yeah, as well as response time. And they do a whole lot of alerting. We have PagerDuty, all that. That's tied into our alerting, and we have alert thresholds. But really, it's just monitoring the graphs, monitoring the error rates and response time. That's generally a good indicator if something's really screwing up. If for better or worse, our phones start ringing like crazy if something goes on, and so customer care usually within 30 seconds of a deploy will tell us if something's wrong as well, which is not good. It's good, but it's not good because I would rather have that alerting happen much faster. But it's already 30 seconds. We'll deploy something, bring, hey, your site's down. That's. It's good that we get that alert, but it's not good that customer cares find that first. So.
Any other questions?
How does your customer care team play into your testing overall?
Yeah, so the question was, how does my customer care team play into our testing and quality? Really, it's just following the checklist that the developer would lay out. Customer care is obviously not sophisticated or as sophisticated as a real tester would be. So we just have to really, tell them exactly what the change is, what to look out for, and of course they, knowing the system, can also think about how a particular change might affect some other component of the system. Ultimately it works out pretty well. If it's a bug fix, and they were the person who was responsible for like reporting the bug, then they're the ones who test that the fix works. If it's a feature, typically that's the job of the PM, but the PM sometimes can delegate out to customer care if he's underwhelmed.
So you think that your customer care team is becoming your QA team?
No, because I don't think that I don't feel like there's a wall. You know, if I was to judge, like, you know, do I feel like there's a wall and we're chucking stuff over it and we're waiting for them to find things? I don't think that's the case, just based upon, like, you know, the practices that we have as an engineering team, you know? And I don't think anybody else feels that way either. Like, I think we would feel it, like, you could really, like, feel it if you had a wall, you're chucking things over and expecting the feedback from the other side of the wall, you know? We don't necessarily feel it. Like, the stuff that we get back from customer care or a PM is user acceptance type of stuff, where it's like, I don't know if this button's gonna work here. Or like, I don't think this feature's gonna make us revenue. You know, that's the type of feedback we get, which is like, that's not wall feedback, that's just like good feedback about a particular feature, you know? The feature works, it's just that it's not gonna be good for our customers.
But you still have these checklists that could work like a test plan or something?
Yeah.
So, what's with that?
What's with that?
I mean,
well, it's just an extra blanket of coverage, you know? Like, yeah, we can do as much like integration testing, automated integration testing as we want, and we do. But ultimately, having a human just run through and just be sure is obviously the best.
I take it that checklist is something that the developer would go through first. These are the sort of things the developer would look at, and these are the things that they have on the checklist. And they pass on to the customer service person. Hey, these are the problem areas that I had. You know, I looked at it. I didn't see any problems with it. Maybe you could take a look at it. You know, because occasionally you have that problem where you come across and it's like, well, it works on my machine, but then you go to someone else's machine and it's not working, and you know, there's no why that happens. That's the way I take that checklist. It's not so much a here's what you need to do. It's here's what I did. And here's everything that I followed, and maybe another set of eyes on it. It's sort of like a code review, a product review, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not saying like what we do as developers is like perfect either. Like they find stuff, you know? It's not like a whole ton of stuff, but sometimes, hey, I had 0 documents and did this weird thing. Like that's a bug, you know? They find those things, but I don't feel like it's an egregious amount of, stuff that they find.
Do you guys have automated tests in addition to that manual test list?
That's right.
Just an additional layer is what we do.
Yeah, and typically like the checklist that the engineer lays out for customer care to do is based upon the automated tests that he already wrote.
You've been mentioning PM, I'm assuming you mean product manager.
Yeah.
But are they the ones who determine which features get developed, and
Yes.
provide a specification, at least on a high level, for how they should work?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the PM, product manager, typically just works with the UX team, comes up with some wireframes, comes up with generally how something's supposed to work. We'll have a grooming meeting to talk about that and break it up into smaller cards. And
Are customer care involved in that as well?
Not usually until the end, until we're about to actually like flip the feature on. That's when we need to be sure that the documentation's there. Usually there's a lot of coordination with marketing as well and sales to be sure that they know about the feature that's shipping, and if there needs to be some sort of campaign or whatever marketing effort to launch it. So there's like a lot more on the other side, as well. Yes.
So do you have any process for running the tests before you merge pull requests, or is all your integration tests and everything just run, after the merge is done, kind of as a whole set?
It runs. We use Circle CI, so it just runs like whenever a pull request is submitted. In order for a pull request to be merged, it has to be green. The build has to be green, and then before we deploy it, the master branch has to be green as well. Yeah, but it's all automated. Our test suite runs in 12 minutes, which like isn't great, but it's okay, you know?
Sure.
But it just gives that extra layer of security that when we push this thing live, like, we're not going to destroy everything. You know?
Are there any parts of your process that really quality where you feel like there's still some room for improvement or areas that you're trying to do well?
Is there room for improvement? Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some room for improvement. I think I mean, I think it's pretty good, you know, like what we have going on right now. Certainly, like, you know, we could get better specs from the PM. Certainly, we could you know, we could probably get better at like the integration tests that we do. But I genuinely feel that things are actually pretty decent right now, and like it's not hindering the rate at which we ship features, you know. So like I feel like we're doing okay. Yes.
You made a comment that you probably would get better specs from PM.
Yeah. But who couldn't?
Having your customer care people both, you know, review those specs.
Yeah.
You know, guys like me and guys like them, we will sniff out the details, but the marketing guys just think we're...
Oh yeah, no, I know. Like, I don't think, I mean, that's a universal thing. You know, I think if you have a generally like more analytics-driven PM, like you'll get better specs. But at some point, like, you know, maybe they just have a general idea and like they just want to like prototype something, and maybe that's all we need to do. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, because the other side of it there is analysis by paralysis.
Right.
Nothing ever gets started because you're trying to perfect
Yeah.
specification.
Yes.
Just curious, do you, when you have tests, you know, bug reports that come in from users, so have you found any sort of proactive techniques you put in place that help you find out what the problem is, like reproduce the error condition? Imagine with that kind of application, it's a little trickier to actually figure out what happened.
Yeah, for us, like, we've really like trained our customer care department. Like, if somebody runs into an issue, like, you know, we give them like, listen, you got to record the screencast. You got to, you know, you have to have their JavaScript console popped open. You know, a whole bunch of different steps. You know, so that like when the bug actually arrives to a developer, there's not really any questions about what's wrong or how to fix it. You know. Yeah. I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Well, I was wondering if there's anything you built into your stuff ahead of time to make it easier to figure out where things went. Where the wheels fell off. To cut down the time it takes to reproduce the bug.
Not particularly. No. Like I don't think we.
Maybe like logging techniques or any kind of stuff, whatever it may be.
We use like we use Papertrail, which is like a service for logging, and you know, we log everything there. So if something's like really hairy, you know, we'll dive into that. In general, though, like our users aren't very sophisticated, and the problems that they run into are not particularly like sophisticated. Sometimes we have an API user that's like really doing something crazy, in which case, like, you know, we really need to dive in. But in general, like, we don't necessarily have that problem.
Right.
Some additional stuff that we do here, maybe, we also use New Relic as well, which gives you a lot of insight into the application. For the mobile apps, there's Crashalytics. There's logging, we use a system called Splunk to centralize all of our logging across everything. Not to mention massive amounts of stats that we have. So we keep track of counts and everything. When you see blips in graphs and whatnot, that might show a much larger problem that might be happening. And so, at least for us, I mean, there's nothing special that we do, but I consider it all normal. You know, New Relic, logging, you know, Crashalytics type things, all these normal things that we have that you want to have in any sort of system. And then, you know, at the end of the day, we also rely on, again, as Matt had mentioned, the feedback from our customers being by, hey, something's not working, something's not right, and we can dig into logs, you know, follow that user and see what they were doing, how they got into that state and whatnot. So keeping an eye on that as well.
Which layer of automated testing do you feel like is the most critical? Like how deep unit tests, mesh with integration tests?
I mean, for us, unit tests are probably the most critical. For the reasons I outlined before. I mean, our language choice, and then also, you know, communication with developers for how a particular piece of code is supposed to work. So, I don't know, integration tests are kind of important to us. Yeah.
We have any other questions? I have one final question. So I guess the entire talk I got out of this is that we don't need a QA department. So you guys, I'd like to thank Grant for coming here. Thank you for coming. Again, next month we're going to have the Designing for Android talk. It's really interesting. I've been pushing on this designer for some time now. He'll probably mention that I've been harassing him to come here and give a talk on designing for Android. And at the very least, I can guarantee that the slides are going to look really good because he's a really good designer. So he's going to have really sexy slides. I'm going to try to get him to do my slides next time. But thank you everybody for attending. Meet us over at Triumph, and